right, with us now, CNN political commentators Shermichael, Singleton, and Bakari Sellers. And friends, Harry and Sarah just talking about a little bit of a divide within the Republican Party about support for military action against Iran. I just had Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee, and this guy didn't mince words. I was asking him about members of his own party that are supportive of U.S. action and what he would call them. Listen to what he said. Congressman, where do you come down on this? And Tucker Carlson has called some members of your own party warmongers.
Yeah, well, I call them war pimps. Lindsey Graham's a friend of mine. Ted Cruz is a friend of mine. Look, I got a daughter just turned 18 last week on the same day as the president did in the United States Army. I don't want to see her go to war.
Not warmongers, but war pimps. I'm not sure if that's a more mild thing there. But what do you think of this divide? And it's not just Congressman Burchett.
Well, look, I think it's a healthy divide when you think about everything we learned from our previous incursion in the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, thousands of U.S. troops killed, thousands more wounded. I believe $1.6 trillion of American taxpayer money spent. And what was the net result? The Middle East is far worse than it is, I would argue, today. Look at the Taliban back in control of Afghanistan. Syria is a complete mess. And so I agree with the president that we should support Israel as our ally with indirect resources. We can do that. Control the airspace, allow Israel to continue to take strategic military attacks against their military installations in Iran. But the question becomes, should the U.S. directly involve itself? And if we do, and Iran decides to respond by attacking some of the bases in the region, killing American troops, we will have no choice at that point but to involve ourselves way more than I think the average American would prefer.
In Bakari, one of the things that I was referring to with Congressman Burchett right there was this conversation that Tucker Carlson, who is vehemently opposed to U.S. military action, had with Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, who is supportive of the U.S. getting involved. And I just want to play a little bit of that.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple? What's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and
what
predominantly Shia. Okay,
it's not even. You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay,
actually,
I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country.
I mean, there's theater there, Bakari, but it is an interesting political situation where you do have some of the most conservative supporters of President Trump now in some vague agreement with some members of the Democratic Party. I wonder how Democrats navigate this.
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, Shermichael was right on the point that we have to support our ally Israel, and there is a way to do that strategically. I think that when you're talking about Iran getting closer to a nuclear weapon, that should terrify us all. But the fact is, we had an agreement in place in 2015, and Iran was in compliance with that agreement, and they were further away from nuclear capabilities than they are today. Bibi Netanyahu and MBS convinced Donald Trump it was an easy mode to convince him to pull out of the nuclear agreement. And when he did that, Iran is now moving further and further towards a nuclear weapon. That's a fact. By pulling out of the Iran nuclear agreement, we're here now where you have to make a decision about are we going to put U.S. military boots on the ground? The answer to that is no. Since Donald Trump has gotten elected, the Middle East is on fire, as we have images on the split screen now. The Ukrainian-Russian war has gotten further out of hand. And these were things that he was going to solve on day one, but have become more and more complicated in his leadership. We had an opportunity to have a diplomatic resolution to this, but Bibi Netanyahu, MBS, and Donald Trump made the decision that was not in American interest to pull out of the Iran nuclear agreement, and here we are.
It is interesting. You talk about Iran getting closer and closer to getting a nuclear weapon. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, in her confirmation hearings, or in hearings before the Senate, basically said she was not under the impression that Iran was very close to getting a weapon. And President Trump was asked about that by our Caitlin Collins. Listen.
Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
Yeah, I don't care what she said Shermichael, aside from all of these considerations about Iran, it's not something you want to, if you're the director of national intelligence, it's something you want your president saying about you.
So the agency, the international agency that's tasked with following these sorts of things did release a study, I believe a week ago, an analysis stating that Iran was a lot closer than they had realized. So I think there's been some changes potentially in the intelligence that the president has seen. So I would sort of back away and say I want to give the president some room here. With that said, though, you know who's the biggest winner of all of this, John? The Chinese. The Chinese are backing Russia. They're backing Iran because they buy a lot of oil from Iran, which has enabled Iran to continue with their military operations, continue with their nuclear weapons program, continuing to fund terrorist groups, proxy groups around the region. By stretching the United States and our military capacity, we're essentially giving the Chinese an opportunity to continue to expand their military technology, their advancements, to continue other encroachments across the globe. This, to me, is not just about Israel. It's not just about Iran. It's about who will be the global superpower for the next 50 to 100 years. The Chinese are making some steps that I think we're not really focused on. That's why I'm really, really cautious and against U.S. involvement directly, that is, in that region.
Well, we'll see what happens. 8:51 a.m. right now. We're waiting to hear more from the White House. Shermichael, Singleton, Bakari, thanks so much for being part of this discussion. Really appreciate it.